Welcome to Brain Health Besties. This is a human-forward podcast for those of us who maybe want to feel better but don't really know where to start. I'm Bailey Pyle, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Nia Howard, a qualified mental health professional.
And I'm Shelby Snyder, a human.
We happen to be professionals in the mental health field, and we are human, trying to navigate the messy, beautiful thing called life.
In this podcast, we hope to share how our brains work and how we can nurture them to add things into our lives that work well, instead of just adding one more task.
Sometimes we feel stuck, or we just need that reminder that we're not alone. Please join us as we explore what it means to be a whole human, take care of our brains, and grow. We are so glad you're here.
Welcome to Brain Health Besties. This is a learning together episode where we really take a deep dive into the why and science behind the reasons these things are good for our brains. Today, we are focused on square breathing and the practice of breath for regulating our nervous system. So we can use this practice just about anywhere, which is one of the things that I love about it.
Yeah, I tend to use this in places where I am a little overstimulated, like the grocery store. Or the
Yes.
checkout line, the pickup line at school, before a big meeting, just any time that I am a little heightened and need to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it feels like sometimes when we're just kind of going through life, sometimes people, I think they're meaning good things, maybe sometimes, but have you ever been told to chill out or calm down? And what does that do?
It
Does
works
it help you?
every
It helps you to
time.
calm
Yeah.
down. No, it doesn't,
No.
right? It kind of makes us more heightened
Yes.
sometimes. But we're talking about breath, and we talk about it on purpose because we all have breath. Now, I know that some of us have different breath capacities if we're feeling ill or have been ill in the past, but our breath is so amazing because it comes with us. They tell us that it's only 6 or 7 big breaths that can really regulate our nervous system again, bring us back into harmony.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's more like 3, right? But we get to practice that today.
We do.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned nervous system because this is the place where my brain gets really happy. I love digging into the research and understanding not just the practice itself, but the why behind it, what makes it meaningful. And the cool thing about our brains is we have an automatic nervous system, right? And that's not just part of our brains. Our brains are a piece of that, but it's really throughout our whole body. And then there are 2 kind of subcategories of our nervous system. There is the parasympathetic nervous system, and there is the sympathetic nervous system. And the best analogy that I have found for those 2 systems is a gas pedal and a brake pedal.
Yeah.
So our sympathetic nervous system is like pushing on the gas. It tells our brains and bodies to go into activation. It puts cortisol into our brains. It pumps adrenaline and other kinds of chemicals and hormones, preparing us for action. And it really sinks into our survival brains in that our fight, flight, or freeze action. And so it helps prepare us for action, whether that be adrenaline to do our best performance. If we're speaking in front of people, if we're an athlete, it means we're more on our game. We're getting more oxygen to our brains and our bodies, more blood pumping through our bodies. And so it can be really helpful in creating more action, some movement, right? And we need that. We need our sympathetic nervous system to activate in small doses because it helps us show up. It helps us perform at our best capacity. It helps us react in situations that can quite literally help us survive.
Sure.
And it's necessary. So we need the sympathetic nervous system. On the other foot or the other pedal would be the parasympathetic nervous system. And what the parasympathetic nervous system does is start to gently push on the brake. It helps slow our brain and body down, helps balance out some of that cortisol and the adrenaline, and puts our minds and bodies into what we call rest and digest. So it activates deeper breathing. It starts to activate our digestive system because those things shut down when we are in sympathetic. But in parasympathetic, it helps our muscles relax. It helps our brains relax. and puts us in a state of more what some people might think of as like calm.
Yeah.
And it looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
And we need a balance of both. There are times where we need the gas pedal, and there are times where we need that brake.
Yeah.
The tricky pieces with being human nowadays is oftentimes our environment puts us in situations where we are full throttle, pedal to the metal,
all the time.
right?
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
So when I hear fight, flight, or freeze, I think of like a bear attack. And the reality is that is not most of our realities on the day to day. Can you help me kind of make sense of different scenarios that might be fight, flight, or freeze that maybe we wouldn't think of?
Yeah. So ancient humans very much, or maybe if we live in the mountains or out in the woods somewhere, maybe bear attacks are still a likelihood, right?
Sure.
But and ancient humans were constantly in those situations where we were put in survival states because of predators or trying to find food or housing or safety in groups, right? Today, if we're not living in the woods or the mountains, the things that put our brains into fight or flight or into that sympathetic nervous system can be things like everyday things such as sitting in car line, waiting to pick up your kiddos, having a difficult conversation with a coworker. Even the thoughts in our own brain can put us into fight, flight, or freeze. It can put us into survival. If I'm having ruminating thoughts that just aren't going away and stuck in my brain, that can put me in those survival states. And it's important to recognize how we are put in survival states now because we don't often get breaks from those things.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Bailey. That kind of helped me connect, and saying those like really helped me realize we are in fight, flight, or freeze quite often. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and it's with normal things.
Yeah.
Right? These are the things that I know I've experienced. I can guess that some of you have experienced. So it's just, you mean with life? Right?
Yes.
It comes up with, okay.
So our brains are doing what they're meant to do because our brains really haven't evolved a whole lot from those bear fighting moments. So it is normal. It's not anything that's weird or not supposed to happen. It is just our brains being our brains.
Yeah.
Well, and really this practice that we're talking about with square breathing too is important, and our using our breath to calm our system, to engage that parasympathetic system can be really, really helpful, because with the pace that our world moves at and with the pace of being human, we are not often afforded those spots naturally. Sure. We have to kind of be intentional about building them in. And like we said before, breath is with us at all times, and we can utilize it in ways that aren't really obvious and in any different kinds of spaces. So it can be really helpful. And there was actually a systematic research review done by Zaccaro and colleagues that really looked at the research from the past 20 years on not just square breathing, but breathing exercises in general. And what we see is, or what they found in the research, was that when we engage our breath intentionally, all of those parasympathetic systems increase, all the sympathetic systems decrease. So our heart rate slows down, our breathing deepens, our blood pressure decreases. That puts us into more of that rest and digest state. Because what we also know about being in sympathetic all the time is that those levels of cortisol, while good in short bursts of time, if they live and exist in our brains and bodies for extended period of time, it starts to have real long-term, not just mental health, but also physical health ramifications. We can face things like heart disease and autoimmune diseases and additional stress and sort of that inner chaos that happens. It can actually shorten our lifespan, which is really kind of jarring if you think about it.
Wow.
And when we think of the fact that we can utilize something like our breath to intentionally activate our parasympathetic system, not saying, let me be clear, that doesn't mean that we are going to go, if we're in that 4 or 5, that we will go to a 0. It just means we're slowly trying to put on that gas pedal, not a hard stomp, but a how do I slow this system down so this one can come up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think what I like most about this practice, and any breathing practice really, is like Nia said, 6 to 7 deep breaths. That doesn't have to take very long. alone.
No.
I think a lot of times we think of caring for ourselves as those big things like taking PTO and taking long breaks and taking that bubble bath.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many things we can do to kind of hack our brains and work with our brains instead of against them that take a short amount of time but are still so helpful.
Yeah.
Stella Grazant is a happiness expert in the field, and she just recently reminded me of a little bit of a fact. And the fact is that when we are activated, right, all these things have happened to us. It really takes our bodies 90 seconds. If we did nothing, right, we had this activation, we'll call it anger or fear.
Mm-hmm.
It really takes 90 seconds for those chemicals to kind of come and go. But we talked about this, we touched on this earlier, is we get stuck sometimes. So we accidentally, unconsciously, maybe consciously reactivate that 90 seconds. And then we do it again and again and again. And we all may know somebody that, my goodness, they feel upset or act upset or are upset all day long or all week long or all month long. And it's because that's gotten stuck. They're reactivating that 90-second timeline. So with things like the square breather, being able to use it anywhere is so important.
Yeah.
So important.
Well, and I can think of times for me personally where that has happened, where it's like I get into that distress mode, and then the next thing happens and it's just like ups the ante a little bit. And then the next thing happens and ups. And all of a sudden, I think, in our mind, when the last straw happens, that moment where our kid spills milk on the floor or you make a wrong turn or just something happens and we have a moment that feels like crisis. It feels like we're at our max. And we think, why am I upset about milk on the floor?
Sure.
It's not the milk.
It wasn't the milk.
It's the buildup of all the things throughout the day without any kind of activation or without enough activation of that parasympathetic to help pull us back down a little bit. It's an accumulation of the things, not the final straw.
Yeah, it piled up. It got heavy.
Yeah.
It got heavy. And that last straw.
Yeah.
That's the one that did it.
That is such a beautiful example. It just got heavy. And of course, like it makes me think of if I'm holding things and people keep piling on or I keep piling on.
Sometimes it's us.
Those things in my hand, at the end, it just gets heavy.
It just gets heavy.
Yeah.
And so these breathing practices, they're not going to take away the entire load.
No.
But they can help pull some stuff off of that pile and just give us a little bit of room to see the problem and to see what the next best step is going to be.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the practice, you all.
Let's do it.
Join us for the Be Well Moment episode following this learning episode to actually get into the practice and learn how to practice square breathing for yourself. Take care, besties. Besties, we are so grateful that you took the time to come and care for you today in community with us. Our brains deserve this time of care.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please find Brain Health Besties wherever you find podcasts. And since sharing is kind, share us with your besties.
We would love to discuss the topics that are meaningful to you. Connect with us at bewell@livebrightly.org.
Until next time, be well, besties.